We work with a lot of folks that are trying to break into tech and SaaS sales. So if you're trying to break in for the first time and you haven't had luck, I want to talk about how you can optimize your resume to get more attention and then also create talking points throughout the interview that will set you apart from your competition. Now, it's important to remember when you're applying for tech and SaaS sales jobs, sure, you can be a great candidate, but in many cases, aside from when the market's insanely hot like it is right now, you have to be the best candidate. And I'm not saying that this all happens at the resume level, but then again, you also have to keep that in mind with so many people applying, so many people looking to make job changes, get pay raises, etc. How are you going to set yourself apart in, at least at a minimum, the top 5 or 10 candidates that are even applying for the role? And that a lot of that is going to come in with the resume. It's like table stakes. One, if your resume is longer than a page, there's no reason for that, period. If you haven't seen, this is an extreme example, but Elon Musk has a 1-page resume. So if you have more than a 1-page resume, what are you even doing? We're not even talking until you're down to 1 page. So a few different things to consider now that you've got it onto 1 page. There's a lot of times where I'm looking over resumes trying to help candidates find different jobs, and everything is very vague. So for instance, if you're I improved process and presented to stakeholders, I know that sounds like a horrible, bland statement when you read it out loud, but you'd be amazed at how generic people's work experience is and the bullets underneath their title. So one, can you quantify the results of your work? Even if you weren't in sales, it's not a matter of just saying I hit 100% quota. Were you an engineer in a relevant industry? Do you have a relevant background? Did you improve a process by say 20%? What was the end result to the company? Did you save them X amount of revenue? What kind of leadership did you have to present to? So for instance, if I had a job as a process engineer, now I want to get more into the sales side of things, I may take that experience and say, I improved this process by 20%, leading to $400,000 a year in revenues generated by our company. That's one example of many. Underneath that bullet, you could say presented to executive leadership, and as an example, got a grant or got a quarter's worth of hours dedicated to this project or whatever it may be. Because while those aren't directly applicable to tech sales per se, a lot of that high level framework, the ways in which you're communicating to different stakeholders and driving value in a company do very much apply. What that also is going to do is to give you a very nice talking point to talk about in the interview. So hey, I see here you saved 20% of time, or you improved a process by 20%, leading to $400,000 in revenue. Let's talk about that. And on your end, now you have a very great talking track about how you did that, who you spoke with, etc. So you're using the resume to highlight very quantifiable and impactful results in the career that you've had thus far. And then you're also directly writing those so you can talk about very succinct and strong stories that you have built in your mind when you're in that interview situation. This is a personal preference of mine. There's no right answer here, but I like to, especially if I'm trying to go into sales for the first time, put an objective statement at the top of my resume. Or maybe I'm trying to make a lateral move and go up in a position, I'm putting a statement as to why. So for instance, if you're breaking into sales for the first time, and let's say you have a past career in whatever it may be, I would put an objective statement, maybe 2 to 3 lines max at the very top, and I can give you an example. I'll link an example of my own resume in the description. I put a statement at the top of my resume saying, looking to break into technical sales after blank amount of years as an engineer, leveraging the leadership and analytical abilities from my past job, I'm looking to drive value in a sales role for X organization. I know some people may disagree with that feedback, and fair enough, but I think it sets the tone right away. Again, if it's very succinct, it also creates a point of entry for me as a potential recruiter or sales manager or whatever. I'm reading this and saying, oh wow, this person used to be an engineer, wants to break into sales, or whatever it may be. That's kind of interesting. At a minimum, I'm going to be compelled to read further. And now again, we have all these statements below that are quantifying the results that you've achieved and creating great talking points for you that may have that person say, wow, I want to hear more about this person. I want to hear more about their experience. Now again, take these or leave these, but this last piece of advice is a little bit more subtle and it requires a little bit more work on you. So again, I'm taking apart the fact that you have already narrowed down a few different companies that you really want to work for. You've actually gone through the job descriptions, and this is where, again, when you consider the fact that it's not just a matter of being a good candidate, it's being the best that will be selected for this job above many other candidates. Are you tailoring your resume specific to the job listing? And I don't mean overtly saying I want to work at so-and-so company because that's been my dream. Who cares, right? But are you going into the job listing looking for the desired skills, the required skills? And are you subconsciously relating to those in the bullet points that you're writing down about your past experience, maybe even in the objective statement? It's as an example, you don't want to be over the top here and so outrageously obvious, because especially the larger you go, organizations may see that. It could be off-putting. But again, feel free to disagree with me, comment below. But like as an example, if they're looking for in their desired skill sets, like strong communication skills, again, this is something you'll see often and a lot of people take for granted, but are you communicating that in your resume? Are you saying presented to CEO, presented to CFO, whoever it may be in past job experience? Even if you don't have past job experience, maybe you're coming from college, maybe elsewhere. Have you communicated and raised money, as an example, for a nonprofit? Have you volunteered and had to get buy-in from other people, whether it's to volunteer their time, whatever it may be? Like, those are the subtle things, again, using the example of communication skills that you can put in your resume and stand out because you're communicating and then, again, creating that launch pad in the interview to talk about those stories in greater depth. Like, again, put yourself in the mind of the recruiter. If you don't have a technical background and you're now trying to sell highly technical or SaaS-related products with no relevant experience, give me a sense of why I'd be willing to take a chance on you in this resume. Can you clearly articulate that you've presented and driven meaningful change in an organization, whether it's a for-profit business or otherwise? Do I get the sense that you can succinctly communicate your own value, which will then translate into the job when you're trying to summarize key points for different stakeholders involved and not send a 10-paragraph novel that's not relevant to everyone on the chain? Succinctly communicating your value, maybe having 3 to 5 points that are all leading to 1, ways that you've driven change in any type of organization or even within yourself. 2, launch pads for stories that you can talk about in greater depth. And then 3, prioritizing them from the most important to the least. And that should, at least at a minimum, give you a better chance. Again, I'll leave it to you. Would be curious on your thoughts on the objective statement, if you've used that before, if you disagree with that. I've also linked my resume below, so feel free to take a look. Would love you to critique it and give your feedback. But those are just a few hints. Hopefully that gives you help. If you have questions, I am actively watching the comments and happy to provide further guidance. So appreciate your time, and we'll see you next week.